The hand that barred her way was draped in a uniform's gold stripes. "This flight is full, Mum." Captain Gregory Barlow's voice was a low, confident drawl. The jet bridge was empty behind him. The woman, Elena Vance, looked at her business-class ticket and then at the pilot's smug face. "Captain," she said, her voice quiet but not weak, "you seem to have me confused with someone who will be denied." He laughed, a short, barking sound. "I am the captain. I have final say, and I don't like your look." He didn't know it yet, but he wasn't just grounding a passenger. He was grounding his entire career. Chicago O'Hare was a symphony of chaos, but Elena Vance moved through it with the practiced ease of a conductor. She wasn't just walking, she was observing. The frayed carpet at gate K12, the stressed, hollow-eyed ticketing agent at H5, the overflowing recycling bin next to a "Fly Green with Meridian" poster. These were all her problems now. Elena Vance was, as of 72 hours ago, the new chief executive officer of Meridian Airways. She'd been headhunted from a logistics tech giant, a disruptor brought in to save the legacy airline from its nosedive. Meridian was bleeding money, its reputation for customer service in tatters, its fleet aging, and its morale at rock bottom. The board hadn't just hired a CEO, they had hired a surgeon, and they expected her to cut deep. She wore a simple, elegant navy blue pantsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a professional, no-nonsense bun. In her carry-on was a laptop, 3 high-density binders, and a spare blouse. She was, in every visible way, just another business traveller. And that was precisely the point. Her first official act as CEO was not a press release or a lavish town hall at the headquarters. It was to book a commercial flight, under her own name, a name no one in the trenches would yet recognize, on one of Meridian's most critical and underperforming routes. Flight 112, Chicago to London Heathrow. She wasn't just flying to London, she was conducting a secret audit. She wanted to see the customer experience with her own eyes, from the check-in kiosk to the landing gear. She wanted to know viscerally what her passengers endured. She had her ticket, a full-fare business-class seat, 14B, purchased with her personal credit card. She would be reimbursed, of course, but the purchase was untraceable to the executive suite. She arrived at gate M12, the departure point for flight 112. The area was crowded, a mix of anxious families, weary road warriors, and excited tourists. The gate agents looked overwhelmed. The flight was already showing a 20-minute delay, and no one had bothered to update the digital display. Elena sat, opened her notebook, and began to write. Gate M12, staffing passenger to agent ratio approx 80:1, inadequate. Signage, vague. Delay announcement, non-existent. Atmosphere, stressed. Passenger sentiment visibly declining. She watched the 2 gate agents. One, a young woman named Sarah, looked to be on the verge of tears. The other, an older man, was sighing heavily into the microphone every time he had to make a garbled announcement. This, Elena thought, was the front line. And the front line was collapsing. Nearby, 2 men in crisp white shirts and black ties stood by the jet bridge door. The pilot and co-pilot. They were chatting, laughing, seemingly oblivious to the stressed environment they were the center of. The pilot, tall and broad-shouldered with silvering hair and a distinct air of self-importance, was the one doing most of the talking. He gestured with wide, sweeping motions, his captain's jacket with 4 gold stripes draped over a nearby chair. He looked less like an employee and more like the lord of a small fiefdom. Elena made another note. Crewgate staff integration, 0. 2 separate teams, not 1. Finally, the boarding call began. The pre-boarding for families and those needing assistance was a disorganized mess. Then the call for first and business class. Passengers. Elena stood, straightened her pantsuit, and joined the short queue. She was third in line. The first two passengers were scanned and waved through by Sarah, the nervous gate agent. Then it was Elena's turn. She stepped forward, holding her phone with the boarding pass displayed. "Good evening," she said, offering a small, polite smile. Sarah nodded, not making eye contact, and reached for the scanner. "Hold on." The voice was deep, cutting, and full of unearned authority. Elena turned. The pilot, the one with the silver hair, had stepped directly into her path, placing a hand on the scanner. His name tag read G. Barlow. "Excuse me?" Elena said. Captain Gregory Barlow looked her up and down. It wasn't a professional glance. It was a slow, dismissive appraisal. He took in her dark skin, her simple suit, her hair. His eyes lingered, and his lip curled into something just short of a sneer. "We're going to need to ask you to step aside, ma'am," he said. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" Elena asked. Her voice remained perfectly level. "There's a problem with me believing it's your ticket," Barlow said, his voice loud enough for the first few people in the economy line to hear. "We've had a lot of fraud in these premium cabins lately." Elena felt the temperature in the room change. The eyes of the other passengers were on her. She was no longer a person. She was a spectacle. "Captain," she said, her voice dropping into a precise, cold tone. "My name is Elena Vance. My boarding pass and my identification match. I suggest you scan my ticket and let me board." "I don't suggest well," Barlow retorted. He turned to Sarah, the gate agent. "Call security. This woman is being disruptive." She just got here, Captain," Sarah stammered, her face pale. "Are you disobeying a direct order from the captain of this aircraft, miss?" Barlow snapped. Elena watched the young woman crumble. Sarah fumbled for her radio. "That won't be necessary," Elena said, her voice cutting through the tension. She looked past Barlow, past the gate, and into the cockpit of the multi-million-dollar aircraft she was now responsible for. "Captain Barlow," she said, her voice quiet but projecting across the gate, "you are making a monumental mistake, and you are doing it in front of a lot of witnesses." Barlow actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Is that a threat? I'm the captain. My word is law here, and I say you're not getting on this plane." He folded his arms, a human wall barring her from the jet bridge. He had all the power, and he was reveling in it. He was the king, and he had just decided to make an example of someone. He just picked the wrong person. The air in the gate area had become thick and toxic. The boarding line had stopped. Every passenger was now an audience member in this sudden, ugly theatre. Phones were starting to emerge, held low, but angled toward the confrontation. Elena saw a red recording light in her periphery. "Good." "Captain Barlow," Elena repeated, her voice a stark contrast to his booming arrogance. It was a surgical instrument. "Let me be very clear. My name is Elena Vance. I am a paying passenger in business class, seat 410 B. You are currently denying me boarding. I need you to state, for the record, your official reason." Barlow was incensed. This woman wasn't cowering. She wasn't crying. She was auditing him. "My reason," he said, stepping closer, using his height to try and intimidate her, "is that I am the pilot in command, and federal aviation regulations give me final authority over this aircraft and its safety. And right now, you are a safety concern." "A safety concern," Elena echoed. The absurdity of it was almost comical. "How so?" "You're agitated. You're being disruptive." "I'm standing still," Elena countered, holding her hands open at her sides. I have not raised my voice. You are the one blocking for the gate. You are the one causing this scene. And you are the one delaying this flight." A man in the economy line, emboldened, shouted, "Yeah, let her on! We want to get home!" Barlow shot a venomous glare into the crowd. "We will board when I have secured the aircraft from potential threats." He turned back to Eleanor, his face now a mask of petty rage. "I'm going to ask you one last time to step out of this line and wait for airport security. And I am telling you, Captain, that I will not. I am a valid passenger, and you are acting on... what exactly? A feeling? You don't like my look?" Barlow's eyes narrowed. He had gone too far to back down. His pride was on the line. He leaned in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "I know your type," he hissed, so only she and the gate agent could hear. "You think you can just waltz in, flash a fake credit card, and get a seat you didn't earn. This isn't a community outreach program, sweetheart. This is a multi-million-dollar machine, and I don't let your kind of riffraff into my cockpit. My kind, sweetheart." The words hung in the air, a cloud of poison. Elena didn't flinch. She didn't react. She just held his gaze. Inside, a cold, hard anger was solidifying into a diamond. This wasn't just an arrogant employee. This was a rot. This was the exact cancer she had been warned about, the old guard culture that was making Meridian toxic. "Sarah," Barlow barked at the gate agent, "done with the pretense. Call security. Now. Tell them a passenger is refusing to comply with a crew member's instructions. That's the code." Sarah, pale and trembling, picked up the radio. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely press the button. "Gate M12 to Central. I need security. We have a passenger, a 1016. Elena looked at Sarah. The young woman wouldn't meet her eyes. She was a kid, terrified, caught between a rock and a hard place. But she was still making a choice. She was choosing to be complicit. "Captain Barlow," Elena said, her voice now devoid of any warmth. "You are grounding this flight. You are costing this company hundreds of thousands of dollars in fuel burn, in delay penalties, in passenger compensation, all because you don't like my look." "I'll take the heat," Barlow said with a shrug, his confidence returning. "It's worth it to keep the cabin clean." The co-pilot, a younger man named Michael Thorne, had been standing by, watching with growing horror. He finally stepped forward, placing a hand on Barlow's arm. "Greg," he said, his voice low, "just look at her ticket. It's valid. Let's just go. We're already late." Barlow ripped his arm away. "You stay out of this, Thorne. You're a co-pilot. You fly when I tell you to fly. You don't question my command." He jabbed a finger at Thorne's chest. "This is my leg, my ship. Or have you forgotten who has the seniority here?" Thorne recoiled, his face flushing with anger and embarrassment. He had tried and been publicly humiliated for it. He stepped back, defeated. Elena noted the interaction. Thorne attempted to de-escalate, overridden. Barlow, hostile to his own crew. 2 airport police officers were now walking briskly down the concourse toward the gate. The sight of their uniforms caused the crowd to murmur and shrink back. "See?" Barlow said, a triumphant smirk on his face. "This is what happens when you don't listen. Now you've done it." The officers, a man and a woman, arrived, their faces professional and wary. "What's the trouble here?" the male officer asked, his hand resting on his belt. "Officer," Barlow said, puffing out his chest, adopting the air of a man reluctantly doing his duty. "I'm Captain Barlow, pilot in command of Flight 112. This woman," he gestured to Eleanor, "is refusing to comply with crew instructions. She's been disruptive. I believe her ticket is fraudulent, and I do not feel safe with her on my aircraft. I need her removed from the gate area." The officers turned to Eleanor. She looked nothing like the disruptive person he described. She looked like a statue. "Mum," the female officer said, her voice firm but not unkind, "I'm going to need you to step over here so we can talk." "I'm happy to cooperate, officer," Elena said, and her voice carried. "My name is Elena Vance. Here is my driver's license. Here is my boarding pass. They match. Here is the credit card I used to purchase the ticket. It also matches. I have been standing in line, waiting to board, when this captain," she pointed at Barlow, "refused me entry. He has stated that he doesn't like my look and that I am not his kind. He is the one who is being disruptive. He is the one holding up this entire international flight." The officers looked at each other. This was not a simple drunk or disorderly. This was a "he said, she said." And one of the he's was a 4-stripe airline captain. The male officer took her ID and her phone. He looked at the boarding pass, looked at the ID. Elena Vance. Okay. He handed them to his partner, who went to the podium to run the names. "Captain," the officer said, turning to Barlow. "Her papers seem to be in order. What specifically is the safety threat?" Barlow was cornered. He had to give them a real reason, not just his bigotry. "She's erratic," he lied, searching for a plausible narrative. "She was muttering. Her eyes are intense. I suspect she may be on narcotics. I'm telling you, my gut, my 25 years of flying, tells me she's a threat, and I will not risk the 200 other souls on this plane for my gut to be proven wrong." It was a brilliant, evil move. He was painting her as unstable, using the coded language of erratic and narcotics to poison the well. He was daring the police to overrule a senior captain's gut feeling about safety. The female officer came back. "The ID is valid, no warrants. Ticket is paid for and confirmed. She's clean, Captain." "I don't care," Barlow shouted, his facade of calm finally cracking. "This is my aircraft. She is not getting on." The standoff was complete. The police couldn't arrest Elena, as she'd broken no laws, but they couldn't force the pilot to let her on either. The airline, Meridian Airways, had given its captains ultimate authority. The plane was now grounded, indefinitely, all because of one man's hatred. Elena looked at the impasse, at the officers, at the defeated co-pilot, at the terrified gate agent, and at the apoplectic captain. She had given him every chance to back down. She had played by the rules. Now it was time to change them. She pulled out her phone. She didn't dial 911. She dialed a number from memory. "Captain Barlow," she said, as the phone began to ring. "You've made your decision. Now I'm going to make mine." Barlow scoffed. "Who are you calling? Your lawyer? Go ahead. I'll have you arrested for trespassing." The phone picked up on the second ring. "Arthur," Elena said, her voice like steel. "This is Eleanor Vance. I'm at gate M12 at O'Hare. I was scheduled to be on flight 112 to Heathrow." She paused, and the entire gate area went silent, straining to hear her side of the conversation. "Yes, was. I've been denied boarding. No, not weather. The pilot. A captain. Gregory Barlow. Yes, Barlow. He has informed me I am a safety risk and not the right kind to be in business class. He has called security and grounded the flight." A muffled sputtering sound came from the other end of the line. "Arthur," Elena continued, "you are the head of North American operations. I am giving you exactly 3 minutes to get down here and unground this flight. And Arthur, bring the head of airport security and bring a new captain." She hung up. Barlow's face had gone from red to a sickly, mottled white. The name Arthur. Arthur Donaldson was the head of ops, a corporate legend, a shark, and then the name she'd said, Elena Vance. Sarah, the gate agent, who had been frantically typing on her computer, trying to find a solution, suddenly froze. She'd been looking up the flight manifest. Now, she clicked on her internal company email, an email that had gone out 3 days ago. Meridian Airways proudly welcomes our new CEO, Elena Vance. The email had a photo, a professionally shot, smiling photo of the woman standing right in front of her. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She looked at the photo. She looked at Elena. She looked at Captain Barlow, who was still processing the phone call. "Oh," Sarah whimpered, a tiny, terrified sound. "Oh no. Captain—" Barlow looked at her. "What?" Sarah turned her monitor around. The picture of Eleanor smiled out at them, with the words Chief Executive Officer in bold letters beneath it. The world seemed to tilt. The blood drained from Gregory Barlow's face, leaving him looking like a ghost in a uniform. Elena Vance didn't smile. She simply crossed her arms. "Your 3 minutes," she said, "are ticking." The silence that fell over gate M12 was heavier than any noise. It was the sound of a career ending. Captain Gregory Barlow stood frozen, his eyes locked on the computer screen. He looked from the smiling corporate photo of Elena Vance to the cold, unimpressed face of the woman standing 3 feet from him. It was impossible. It couldn't be. This woman was the new CEO, the tech wizard from Silicon Valley, the faceless executive the entire pilots' union had been grumbling about. That's a trick," he stammered. But the bravado was gone. His voice was a thin, reedy thing. "That's photoshopped." "Sarah," Elena said, not taking her eyes off Barlow. "Show him the internal memo, the one from the board of directors." Sarah, who looked like she might faint, clicked a few times. The formal letterhead appeared. "To all Meridian employees, pleased to announce, Ms. Elena Vance. Leadership. New chapter." "It's real, sir," Sarah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. She's her." The 2 police officers, who had been watching this all unfold, suddenly looked deeply uncomfortable. They had been drawn into an internal corporate execution. The male officer subtly unclipped the radio from his belt, ready to call for his superior. This was now, officially, way above his pay grade. I, Barlow began. He unbuttoned his collar, which suddenly seemed too tight. He was sweating. "Ma'am, Miss Vance, I was just following protocol, safety, my primary concern. I didn't recognize you." "That is the entire point, Captain," Elena said, her voice resonating in the hushed terminal. "You weren't supposed to recognize me. You were supposed to treat me like a passenger, like a human being. And you failed." "Now wait just a minute," Barlow tried, a flicker of his old arrogance returning. "You can't just come in here, undercover, and entrap people. I was doing my job. I protect my aircraft." "You weren't protecting it," Elena said. "You were poisoning it. You delayed a flight, alienated a paying customer, and publicly discriminated against a black woman. You did all of that before I was your boss. The fact that I am your boss just means I'm in a unique position to hold you accountable." From the end of the concourse, a new sound. Not walking, running. 3 men in dark blue Meridian executive suits were sprinting toward the gate, their polished shoes slipping on the tile. The man in the lead, a portly, red-faced man named Arthur Donaldson, was yelling into a walkie-talkie. "Lock down M12, get a new flight crew, get a new captain, now!" They skidded to a halt in front of the gate, a picture of corporate panic. Arthur saw Elena, and his face, already bright red, somehow deepened in colour. "Miss Vance!" he panted, straightening his tie. "Miss Vance, I cannot. This is unacceptable." "Hello, Arthur," Elena said calmly. "You made it in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Impressive." Arthur ignored everyone else. He ignored the police, the passengers, and the crew. He had eyes only for Eleanor. "Miss Vance, on behalf of the entire company, this is not who we are." "It is exactly who you are, Arthur," Eleanor said, and her words were a slap. "This is the Meridian Airways that I was hired to fix. This," she gestured to Barlow, who was now trying to blend into the scenery, "is the problem." Arthur finally turned his gaze to Captain Barlow. If looks could kill, Barlow would have been vaporized. "Captain Gregory Barlow," Arthur said, his voice now a low, dangerous rumble. "What did you do?" "Sir," Barlow stammered. His entire power posture collapsed. He was no longer a king. He was a schoolboy in front of the headmaster. "I had a safety concern. The passenger was... I didn't know." "You didn't know she was the CEO?" Arthur roared, and the entire terminal jumped. "So what? Would you have done this to any other woman? To any other person of colour? Is this the service we provide? You are a 25-year veteran, Greg. You're not some rookie. You know the rules." "I was upholding the rules," Barlow pleaded, his career flashing before his eyes. "No," Elena said, and her voice cut through Arthur's rage like a scalpel. "You were not. You were upholding your own prejudices. You saw a black woman in business class, and your first assumption was fraud, not customer. You used the word safety as a weapon to enforce your own bigotry, and you did it on my plane." She paused. "My airline." The finality of those 2 words hung in the air. Elena turned to the police officers. "Officers, thank you for your time. As you can see, this is an internal airline matter. We will not be pressing charges." "But you," the female officer began, clearly on Eleanor's side now. "I am not a victim, officer," Eleanor said. "I am the CEO, and this is a personnel issue. We won't be needing you." The officers, visibly relieved, nodded. "Ma'am, Mr. Donaldson." They backed away, already speaking into their radios, closing out the call. Now it was just the airline. Elena turned to the passengers, who had watched the entire drama with rapt attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice projecting clearly. "My name is Elena Vance. I am the new CEO of Meridian Airways. I want to personally apologize for this disgraceful delay. What you have just witnessed is a failure of our company's values, and it will be rectified." She turned. "Arthur, this flight is now delayed by, 45 minutes? At least, Miss Vance, we have to find a new captain." "No," Elena said. She looked past Barlow to the co-pilot, Michael Thorne, who had been standing by, silent and horrified. "First Officer Thorne," Elena said. Thorne jumped as if struck. "Yes, ma'am. Miss Vance?" "How long have you been a first officer, Michael?" 7 years, ma'am. 4 on the 777. "Are you rated to command this aircraft?" "Yes, ma'am. I have my captain's certification. I just haven't been promoted yet." "Congratulations, Captain Thorne," Elena said. "You've just been promoted. This is your leg. Get in that cockpit and get this plane to London. We are leaving in 10 minutes. The entire gate area seemed to suck in a collective breath. First Officer, no, Captain, Michael Thorne stared at Eleanor. He looked at Barlow, then at Arthur Donaldson, then back to Eleanor. He was looking for someone to tell him this was a joke. "Ma'am." "Miss Vance," Thorne said, his voice trembling slightly. I can't just... the paperwork, the seniority list. Captain Barlow is... Captain Barlow is irrelevant, Elena said, her voice flat. He is no longer employed by Meridian Airways. Arthur, am I wrong? Arthur Donaldson, who had been a whirlwind of frantic energy, snapped to attention. He looked at Barlow, his expression now one of pure, legalistic coldness. Gregory Barlow, Arthur said, as a senior executive of this airline, I am informing you that you are officially suspended, pending termination. You are grounded, effective immediately. Hand over your company credentials, your ID, your cockpit keys, everything. You can't do this, Barlow roared, his panic finally turning back to rage. The Union will hear about this. You can't just fire a 25-year veteran on the say-so of her. This is a setup, an illegal entrapment. It is an on-site performance review, Captain, Elena corrected him, and you have failed spectacularly. She turned back to Thorne. Michael, I am the CEO. Arthur is the head of operations. We are giving you a direct field promotion. We will handle the Union. We will handle the paperwork. What we need right now is a pilot. We need a captain to fly this plane and get these 200 passengers to their destination. Are you that captain, or are you not? It was the test of his life. Thorne looked at the man who had been his superior, a man who had belittled him and harassed a passenger. He looked at the new CEO, a woman who was offering him the one thing he'd always wanted, but in a trial by fire. He stood up straight. He visibly shed his co-pilot's deference and put on the mantle of command. His voice, when it came, was steady. Yes, Miss Vance, I am. I'll need a new co-pilot, though. We have a reserve co-pilot 5 minutes out, Arthur said, already on his phone. He'll meet you on the jet bridge. Get this plane moving. Yes, sir, Thorne said. He didn't look at Barlow. He walked straight to Elena, his face set. Miss Vance, I apologize for his behavior. It was not representative of our crew. It will not happen again on my flight. I am counting on that, Captain Thorne, Elena said, with a slight nod. Thorne nodded once, turned, and disappeared down the jet bridge toward the cockpit, a man with a new purpose. The passengers, sensing the shift, sensing that the drama was over and the journey was beginning, burst into applause. A few people cheered. Go, Captain Thorne. The energy in the gate had completely reversed. Now, only the wreckage was left. Barlow stood there, his credentials still in his hand, a look of profound, bottomless shock on his face. He was a statue of his own hubris. Arthur, Elena said, turning to the executive. Have security escort Mr. Barlow from the premises. He is not to set foot in a Meridian terminal again. I want his access revoked before I board this flight. But my bag, Barlow said, a pathetic, last-ditch protest. My overnight bag is on the plane. We will have it retrieved and mailed to your home address, Arthur said coldly. Alex, he said to one of the younger executives, go with Captain Thorne, get the bag, and get his, he spat the word, name off the manifest. He's a non-entity. 2 new security guards, not airport police, but Meridian's own private security, had arrived. They were large, expressionless, and clearly took their orders from Arthur. They flanked Barlow. Mr. Barlow, one said, please come with us. Barlow looked at Elena one last time. His face was a twisted mask of hatred, humiliation, and disbelief. You've ruined me, he whispered. No, Captain, Elena said, her voice quiet but carrying. You ruined yourself. You just wanted me to be here to watch. With that, she turned her back on him. She picked up her carry-on bag, which she had set down at the beginning of the confrontation. She looked at Sarah, the gate agent, who was still standing at the podium, crying silently. Sarah's face was a mess of mascara and shame. Miss Vance, Sarah whispered, I'm so sorry. He's a captain. I didn't know what to do." "You had a choice, Sarah," Elena said, her voice not cruel but factual. "He was one abusive man. You were a representative of this airline. You could have called your manager. You could have hit the silent alarm. You could have told the police the truth, that I was calm and he was the aggressor. You had options. You chose the one that protected you and not the customer. That's a problem." Am I fired too?" Sarah asked, her voice a child's wail. "No," Elena said. "You're not. You're on administrative leave. When I get to London, I am going to review your file. I'm going to review the training protocols for all gate agents. And then we are going to have a long talk about what it means to work for Meridian Airways. You are the bystander in this, and I need to find out why our culture creates so many bystanders." Sarah just nodded, tears streaming down her face. She was neither condemned nor saved. She was in purgatory. Elena then turned, finally, to the jet bridge. She looked at the other business-class passengers who were still waiting. "Please," she said, with the first hint of a warm smile she'd shown all night. "Board. Welcome to Meridian Airways." She stepped forward, held out her phone. The other gate agent, the older man who had wisely stayed silent, scanned it. The machine beeped. Green. "Vance, Elena. Seat 14B, boarded." Elena Vance walked down the jet bridge. As she did, the passengers in the main cabin line, who had heard and seen everything, began to clap. It started with one or two, and then grew, a rolling wave of applause that followed her all the way to the aircraft door. She was no longer an anonymous passenger. She was the CIO, and she had just cleaned house. Walking onto the 777 felt different. The flight attendants at the door, a senior purser, and a younger flight attendant greeted her with faces of pure, unadulterated terror. They had clearly heard the commotion. The purser, a woman named Margaret, had her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Welcome." "Miss Vance?" Margaret stammered. "Margaret," Elena said, reading her name tag and offering a small, reassuring smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Please just call me Elena. It's been a long night already." Elena's demeanor had shifted. The ice-cold executive who had just terminated a 25-year veteran was gone. In her place was a calm, collected leader. She knew this crew was on edge. She knew the entire plane was on edge. "I am in seat 14B, Elena said. "I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have a glass of water. And I'm going to review my notes. I would appreciate it if you and your team would simply run this flight exactly as you normally would. I want to see the real Meridian service." "Yes, ma'am," Margaret said, her voice still shaky. "Of course." Elena walked through the first-class galley into the business-class cabin. The passengers who had boarded before her were all staring. She smiled politely, nodded, and found her seat. She slipped into 14B, a window seat, stowed her bag, and pulled out her laptop. The cabin door closed. The ding of the PA system chimed. A new voice filled the cabin. Not the arrogant boom of Gregory Barlow, but a calmer, steadier, slightly nervous new voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain, Michael Thorne. Welcome aboard Meridian Flight 112 with service to London Heathrow." There was a perceptible pause. Elena could hear the passengers holding their breath. "I want to personally apologize for our delay tonight," Captain Thorne continued. "We had an unexpected change in our command crew. We are fully staffed and ready for departure. Our flight time tonight will be 7 hours and 40 minutes. The flight attendants are coming through the cabin for final safety checks. We ask that you sit back, relax, and we'll get you to London safely. Thank you for your patience and for flying with us." It was simple. It was professional. It was perfect. Elena looked out the window as the plane began its pushback from the gate. She could see the flashing lights of the security car escorting a man, Barlow, away from the terminal. He was gone. The poison was out. The flight was, by all accounts, unremarkable, which was, in itself, remarkable. The flight attendants, after their initial terror, settled into a rhythm. Elena observed. She saw Margaret comfort a nervous flyer in the next row. She saw a younger attendant, Ben, patiently explain the entertainment system to an elderly passenger. The service was good. The food was adequate. She made a note. Reevaluate catering contract. The Wi-Fi was spotty. Another note. Investigate provider. She wasn't just a passenger. She was a sponge, absorbing data. Halfway over the Atlantic, as the cabin was dark and most passengers were asleep, the senior purser, Margaret, approached Elena's seat. She was holding a small bottle of water. "Miss Vance?" she whispered. Elena, who had been power napping, opened her eyes. "Hello, Margaret. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the entire crew, thank you." Elena was taken aback. "Thank you for what?" Margaret leaned in, her voice barely audible. "For what you did. For Captain Barlow." Elena frowned. "You knew him?" "Knew him." Margaret let out a sigh that sounded like it had been held in for a decade. "Miss Vance, Gregory Barlow was a menace. We called him King Greg. He was awful, especially to the female attendants. He was a bully, a misogynist, and a racist. I've seen him do things to passengers before. Never this bad, but he'd lose the meal choice for people of color. He'd make comments. He'd find reasons to have people spoken to by security for looking at him wrong." "And no one ever reported him?" Elena asked, her voice a cold whisper. "Report him?" Margaret gave a bitter, soundless laugh. "To who? The union?" "He was the union. He was the senior rep for the Chicago hub. He was untouchable. He's ruined at least 3 careers that I know of. Flight attendants who crossed him were suddenly on the worst routes, or facing disciplinary action for insubordination. He was a cancer, and we all just had to fly with it." Elena felt a new, colder anger. This was worse than a single incident. This was a systemic failure. This was a rot that had been allowed to fester, protected by the very systems that were supposed to prevent it. "Why are you telling me this now, Margaret?" "Because," Margaret said, "you're the first person in power who has ever done anything about it. You're the first one he couldn't bully. He picked a fight with the one person who could actually end him, and you did it. In front of everyone. You gave Captain Thorne his command. You gave us hope. That maybe things can actually change." Elena was silent for a long moment. The weight of her new role settled on her. She wasn't just running a company, she was fighting a culture. "Margaret," Elena said, "I am going to land in London, and I am going to go straight to our operations center. I am going to pull every complaint file ever filed against Gregory Barlow, and then I am going to pull the files of every person who read those complaints and did nothing." "Thank you, Miss Vance," Margaret said, and this time Elena could see the glint of tears in her eyes. "Thank you." "Now get some rest," Elena said. "We've got a lot of work to do." As the first light of dawn broke over the Irish Sea, painting the cabin in a soft orange glow, Elena Vance closed her laptop. Her initial plan, a quiet audit, was in ruins. But a new plan had formed. It wasn't about saving money on catering. It was about saving the soul of the airline. The plane landed smoothly at Heathrow, a textbook landing by the new Captain Thorne. As the plane taxied, Thorne came on the PA one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow. On behalf of your entire crew, it was a true privilege to fly you here tonight. Thank you." When he said, "your entire crew," Elena knew he meant it. She was the last one to deplane. She stood at the cockpit door as Captain Thorne was finishing his shutdown procedures. "Captain Thorne," she said. He stood up, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Miss Vance, welcome to London. You did a fine job, Michael. A truly fine job." "Thank you, Ma'am. I just did what I was trained to do." "You did more than that. You stepped up. Meridian needs leaders like you. I'm making your field promotion permanent. HR will have the paperwork by the time you're back in Chicago. Your pay will be retroactive to tonight." Thorne was speechless. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Elena said. "Just be the kind of captain that Gregory Barlow never was. Be the kind of captain who protects his passengers, all of them, and who respects his crew. Can you do that?" "Yes, Ma'am," Thorne said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can." "Good. Now go get some rest," Elena said. "I have a feeling you're going to be a very busy man." As Eleanor Vance walked into the terminal, her phone was already buzzing. A passenger from the flight, the one with the red recording light, had uploaded their video. The clip of Barlow saying, "I am the captain, and I say you're not getting on this plane," followed by Elena's calm takedown, was already going viral. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. By the time Elena had cleared customs, her phone was not just buzzing. It was in a state of thermonuclear meltdown. The video, shot by a passenger named Kenji Tanaka, was everywhere. It was on Twitter, now X, TikTok, and was the lead story on every major news aggregator. The title was explosive. "Airline captain refuses to let black woman board. Twist, she's the new CEO." The clip was devastating. It clearly captured Barlow's "I don't like your look" and "not your kind" comments. It showed his smug, dismissive attitude and his use of the safety excuse. Then it showed the glorious, dramatic arrival of Arthur Donaldson and the public execution of Barlow's career. It was a perfectly crafted, 3-minute story of hubris and karma. Meridian's stock, which had been in a slow, steady decline, had just hit an air pocket. In pre-market trading, it was down 8%. The board of directors was panicking. Elena's inbox was a sea of red-flagged emails. From Arthur Donaldson. From legal. From chairman of the board. Elena ignored them all. She found a quiet executive lounge, ordered a strong black coffee, and called her head of communications, a woman she'd hired from her old tech firm, a crisis PR genius named Jessica. "Jess," Elena said, "are you seeing this?" "Seeing it." Jessica's voice was electric. "Elena, I'm living it. The world is on fire. The narrative is, well, it's not good. Meridian Airways, racist from the top down. Wait, that was before the CEO part. Now it's new CEO cleanse house on day 1. It's spinning fast. What do? We get ahead of it," Elena said. "We don't hide. We don't release a mealy-mouthed statement about investigating the incident. We own it." "What do you mean, own it?" "I mean, I'm writing a public statement right now. Not from Meridian Airways. From me, Elena Vance, CEO. And it's not an apology. It's a promise." "Elena, the lawyers are going to have a stroke. Admitting fault." "I'm not admitting fault. I'm claiming responsibility," Elena corrected. "This happened. It's on video. Denying it is pointless. Instead, we use it. This isn't a scandal, Jess. This is our new marketing campaign." You're insane," Jessica said, but there was a note of admiration in her voice. "Okay, I'm listening." "The statement is this," Elena said, pacing the lounge. "My name is Elena Vance. What you saw on that video was real. It was a failure of our culture, and it is the exact reason I was hired. I was on that flight to see our problems firsthand. I just didn't expect the problem to confront me at the gate. My promise to our passengers is this. I will not lead an airline where any passenger or any employee is judged by the color of their skin. The old guard is out. The new Meridian is boarding. We have a lot of work to do, but we are starting today. The captain in that video has been terminated. The co-pilot who stepped up has been promoted. That is the new Meridian." There was a long silence on the other end. "Jess?" "I'm crying," Jessica said. That's the boldest PR move I've ever heard. It's brilliant. It recenters you as the hero, it validates the public's anger, and it gives a path forward. Okay. Let me draft it. I'll send it to legal, but I'll tell them it's a courtesy review only. You're the CEO. You can post what you want. Good. Post it in 2 hours. Now, I have to deal with the fallout here." Elena hung up and finally called the chairman of the board, a man named Richard Carlyle. "Elena," he boomed, his voice tight with anxiety. "What is this mess? Our stock is tanking. The union is already calling for a general strike over unlawful termination. You've been CEO for 3 days and you've started a war." "Richard," Eleanor said, her voice calm. "Good morning. I've just saved this airline. Did you watch the video?" "Of course I watched the video. It's a disgrace." "Yes, it is. And it's a disgrace that has been happening, undocumented, for years. Gregory Barlow was the union rep for Chicago. I've had Margaret, the purser from the flight, give me an off-the-record statement. Barlow was a known predator. He was protected. The union protected him. The company protected him. The only reason he's gone is because his victim, this time, was me." She let that sink in. "Richard," she continued, "you hired me to cut the rot. I just found the main tumor. The stock is down 8%. That's a flash-in-the-pan panic. Wait until my statement hits. We're not a racist company. We're a company actively fighting racism. That's the new narrative. And the union, they will ground every plane." "Let them try," Elena said, her voice hardening. "Let them strike to protect a man who, on camera, racially harassed a passenger. Let's see how that plays in the media. This isn't a fight about labor. This is a fight about decency, and it's a fight we will win." Carlyle was silent. He was a numbers man. He was watching the stock. I trust you, Elena," he said finally, though he sounded anything but. "But this better work. Fix this." "It's already fixed, Richard," Elena said. "The plane landed safely." She hung up. Her next call was to Arthur Donaldson. "Arthur, I need a status report." "Ms. Vance," Arthur said, his voice all business. "Barlow is off the premises. His termination papers are being drafted by legal, citing gross misconduct, passenger endangerment, and violation of corporate ethics. We're building a fortress. The union is screaming, but we've got the video. It's an ironclad case. The rest of the crew from Flight 112 is being debriefed. Captain Thorne is already a hero on the company's internal forums. Sarah Jenkins, the gate agent, well, she's in your hands." "Good," Elena said. "On Sarah, I want her in intensive retraining, de-escalation, intervention, and corporate values. I want her to work with the DEI team and write a new training module for gate agents on how to handle crew-passenger conflicts. She's not a villain. She's a symptom of a culture of fear. Let's cure her." "Yes, Ma'am. Consider it done." "And Arthur," Elena said, "pull the file on every single flight attendant, pilot, and agent who filed a complaint against Gregory Barlow in the last 10 years. That's a lot of files, Ms. Vance." I know. And I want to know which managers received those complaints and marked them unfounded. Those managers are next. Elena hung up. She took a sip of her coffee. It was cold. She looked out the window at the busy tarmac of Heathrow. Every single plane, every single employee was her responsibility. It was a daunting, terrifying, and utterly thrilling thought. The cleanup had just begun. The fallout was immediate, but not in the way the board had feared. Elena Vance's public statement, a masterstroke of crisis communication, hit the internet like a thunderclap. She didn't apologize. She took ownership. She framed the incident not as a scandal, but as a public execution of the toxic culture she was hired to fix. The narrative flipped overnight. Meridian's stock, after a brief panic, soared 12% as investors saw a strong, decisive leader. Bookings spiked, driven by a new, diverse generation of travelers who wanted to fly Elena's airline. For Gregory Barlow, the karma was just beginning. He was, of course, terminated. The pilots' union, as predicted, immediately filed a grievance, screaming unlawful termination and entrapment. They were ready for a war. What they weren't ready for was Eleanor's counter-offensive. Her legal team didn't just present the viral video, they presented a 400-page binder. It was a secret history of Barlow's reign of terror. 17 formal harassment complaints from flight attendants, logs of passenger disturbances on his flights, and 2 hush money settlements the previous administration had buried. Faced with a mountain of evidence that their senior rep was a serial predator, the union quietly and quickly dropped the grievance. Gregory Barlow was on his own. But Eleanor wasn't done. A simple firing wasn't enough. Barlow was a pilot. His authority came from his license. She filed a formal complaint with the Federal Aviation Administration. She didn't file it based on his racism, but on safety. She argued that Barlow's volatile temperament and inability to assess a situation without personal prejudice made him a direct threat to any passenger or crew. She used his own fake safety concern as a weapon against him. The FAA investigation was swift. They reviewed the video, the affidavits, and the binder. 3 months later, the ruling came down. Gregory Barlow's airline transport pilot license was permanently revoked. He was finished. He couldn't fly for Meridian. He couldn't fly for anyone. The very identity he had built his life around, the 4 gold stripes, the king of the cockpit, was stripped from him. The final report landed on Eleanor's desk 6 months later. The 12 managers who had protected Barlow, the ones who dismissed the complaints, had all been terminated. The purser, Margaret, was promoted to head of in-flight services. The new culture was firmly in place. And as for Barlow, the 55-year-old was unemployable in the only industry he knew. The last line of the HR report was a small note from an allied regional carrier. Gregory Barlow had just been hired as a ramp agent. He was now loading baggage in all weather for the very planes he used to fly, forced to watch the new Meridian, Elena's Meridian, soar without him. The story of Elena Vance and Captain Barlow became a legend at Meridian Airways. It was a brutal, public lesson that the old way of doing things was over. It showed that in the real world, karma isn't some mystical force. It's the result of your own actions finally catching up to you. Gregory Barlow built his throne on prejudice and power, but he forgot that the person he stepped on could be the one who owned the entire kingdom. Elena Vance didn't just take her seat on the plane. She took her seat at the head of the company and proved that the best way to deal with a snake is to cut off its head. What did you think of Elena's response? Was Barlow's karma truly deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story of justice, be sure to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more true life tales of drama and comeuppance.